Hello, my lovely anatomists and physiologists. Welcome back. We're going to have just a real short conversation about the lungs. And we can go super brief in our conversation because you are dipping into a lot of the anatomical details as part of your lab work. So make sure that you are, of course, following along that way. When we talk about the lung, we're going to see that it's going to consist basically of the bronchial tree. So when we talk about bronchial tree, we're talking about left and right main bronchi, the lobar bronchi, segmental bronchi, bronchioles, leading to that respiratory bronchiole and the alveoli. So it has some conducting portion and it has some respiratory portion. The other thing that we'll see that's important in the lung is, of course, the pulmonary circuit. So this is a direct tie-in with what we've done in the cardiovascular system. So we know that there are pulmonary arteries leaving the heart going to the lungs. We know that there's a capillary bed here. And then we have, of course, pulmonary veins carrying that newly oxygenated blood from the lung back to the heart. So we've talked through that in a good level of detail. The other thing that we want to see is that the lung is located in a pleural cavity. And so it's aligned with a pleural pleura membrane. And this is going to be part of the serous membrane. So this connects in with information that you've studied way back, chapter 1 of the course. When we talk about the pleura, about this membrane, we're going to see it's doing two important things. So one important thing is that it's going to make pleural fluid. And this is going to both reduce friction and provide adhesion. We're going to talk about this as we go through. And I'm going to actually highlight that idea because this is going to be important to how the lung functions. And then the second kind of job of the pleura is just to separate and protect the lungs. I mean, let's think about this. The lungs are located in the thoracic cavity. The heart is located in the center. The heart is constantly moving. The lungs are moving. And then you have just the upper torso. You have musculature of the upper torso that's producing movement. And so this is an area where there's quite a lot of movement, and you don't want, you don't want the friction of the movement of the lungs, the movement of the heart, the movement of the body wall. You don't want friction there, right? And we need to protect that tissue. We always are seeing this pattern where our organs are surrounded by a connective tissue layer that are doing two seemingly opposite jobs. One is making it a separate organ, but also in some way connecting it back into the body. And so we see that here as well. When we talk about the serous membrane, when we talk about the pleural membrane, what we're talking about is you have both a parietal pleura and a visceral pleura. You have both a parietal pleura and you have a visceral. Visceral's guts. That's your organ. So your visceral pleural is basically your lung wall, whereas your parietal pleura is going to be lining your body wall. So let's draw a picture. Let's draw a picture in the corner here. So I'm going to draw 2 big lines. I'm kind of curving them because your lung is somewhat curved. And my outer line, I picked kind of a maroon color, kind of red. This is the parietal pleura. And so I'm going to take a black line. I'm going to make it real thick. And I'm going to label that black line on the outside my body wall. And then I have that inner line, which I did with blue, and I'm going to label that my visceral pleura. And then inside that, I'm going to take my highlighter and I'm just going to shade inside that line. And I'm going to label that as like my lung. Now the space in between, I'm going to highlight with yellow. So the cavity in between the parietal pleura and the visceral pleura is going to be full of fluid. And that fluid is the pleural fluid. That fluid is the pleural fluid. So what we see is the parietal pleura is connected to the body wall. That's the thoracic wall. The body wall is talking about your skin, your adipose tissue, your bone, and your muscle. And the parietal pleura is connected to that. You have a space that's full of fluid, and then you have the visceral pleura. The visceral pleura is the wall of the lung. That pleural fluid between the parietal pleura and the visceral pleura connects them. So what this means is the lung doesn't have a lot of muscle. The only muscle to the lung is in the bronchiole, that smooth muscle. But we have this adhesion to the body wall. So we have skeletal muscle of the thoracic cage, and we can change the size of our cage. And when we change the size of our thorax or thoracic cage, we're going to pull with it the lung. So what we're going to see when we talk about breathing, we're going to be using skeletal muscle to change the size of the thoracic cage, and that's going to pull the lung with it. So the skeletal muscle of the thoracic cage is going to change the size of your lung. And that's how we're going to get air in and air out of the body. So stay tuned. As always, take care of yourselves and each other.